All right, let's do this. Okay, so I'm going to tell you guys why payroll is important, what is the difference between someone that you hire as a W-2 employee, someone that you hire as a 1099. I don't even know what this whole frame rate means, so I hope this is still working. My computer's throwing warnings at me. Okay, good. So a lot of new companies will hire people as a 1099 person, contractor, right? So you're not hiring them usually, you're hiring their company. But this is something that I get asked about a lot, or people have a lot of misunderstandings and confusion on. And so I want to be able to explain it. And I know there's probably going to be a lot of questions, and I will give you guys a whole webinar on this, so you can ask questions at the end. I'm not going to cut it short just because I needed tech support. Okay, so let's say that your company is a window washing company, and you hire someone to do window washing for you. So just by the fact that they are doing the same thing that your company does, they have to be an employee. They can't be a contractor at that point. That's one of the main points that the IRS will look at, is what are they doing for you? So I just want to start with that point, because that's going to be the essence of it. What is that person doing for your company? If you are a marketing company and you hire someone to do marketing for your clients, they are an employee. I mean, I'm not talking about if they're in other countries and you're hiring VAs, okay, that's different. But if you're in the U.S. and you're hiring someone in the U.S. to do what your company does, they have to be an employee. But let's say you're a window washing company and you hire a marketing company to do marketing for you. That's a completely different thing. They can totally 100% be a contractor at that point. They're not doing what you do. Let's say, there's a lot of different ways that this works, right? You have to look at what are they doing? Are you directing what they do? Like, are you telling them how to do their job? Are you telling them their schedule? You have to look at all these things. So I'm a bookkeeper. Before I started my bookkeeping firm, I would get hired by companies to go do bookkeeping for them freelance. And I would explain to them that I was a contractor. They're hiring basically me as a contractor. I'm coming in a few hours a week or whatever I'm doing. They can't direct my schedule. They can't direct how I do my work unless, they were trying to hire me as an employee. So that's the same thing. If you, but there's different ways there's different rules and things that you can look at. Let's say you have an insurance company and you hire an assistant. Does that assistant work for you full time? Okay, they're not selling insurance, but they work for you full time. Are you directing their schedule? Do they have other clients or other people that hired them to be an assistant for? If they were doing personal assistant or assistant work for 5 different clients on whatever schedule that they set with you, that would be one thing. But if they're working for you full time, only for you, you direct every day, they're using your supplies and materials, at that point, they are an employee. Now, I do want to preface this with, I know I've said this before, but I'm not a lawyer. There's obviously can be circumstances and situations that are slightly different, and you can always consult a lawyer. You don't have to take what I say as law or as the be all end all of payroll laws, but that is the gist of it. That's the general rule. You have to look at what is the purpose of what that person is doing for you, and are you directing their work? Are you treating them as an employee? And you guys know what I mean, right? You have had people come into your company and provide services for your company, and you don't tell them, if a plumber comes in, you're not telling them how to fix your toilet. You might not even know. they're obviously, a contractor. If they're fixing it for your company, if they're fixing it for you personally, that doesn't even matter. But are you telling them how to do their job? Are they working for other people? You have to look at all these different points to really determine. Hi, Sean. Thanks for joining us. To really determine whether they should be an employee or contractor. And if you're not sure, you can ask your bookkeeper, you can ask your CPA, you can ask your attorney. Obviously, if they're in another country, they are not going to be able to be an employee very easily. There are ways to do that, but for the most part, if you're hiring a VA, you don't have to worry about this. Another thing to know is that when we file 1099s at the end of the year, sometimes people think that the only 1099s that they need to provide are for people who they hired as a contractor. But that's not necessarily the case, because you're a marketing company, you might not think of them as a contractor, but unless they're a corporation, they're going to need a 1099. You're a bookkeeper and your accountant, unless they're a corporation, they're going to need a 1099. Exactly, Jerry. When in doubt, ask. Because you really want to keep your legal rudiments on this. Because here's what can happen. Let me tell you the dark side of the moon, right? If one of those people that you hired as a contractor feels that they should have been paid as an employee, and they report you to, labor and industries, the labor board, whatever, and you get found to be in the wrong, that they should have been an employee, you now owe all the payroll taxes for the whole length of time that they were working for you, as well as any overtime that they believe they were entitled to. So you want to get this right from the beginning. You want to make the ethical choice, not the easier choice. It's not always easier to hire someone as an employee rather than a contractor, but it's usually, if you're not sure, usually they should be an employee. Not always, but usually. Always ask. And then, right now we are sending out 1099s to contractors, and a lot of clients will tell us, oh no, I don't have any 1099 contractors. And we go through their books, and there are people or companies that they paid more than $600 in the year who do need a 1099, but you don't think of them as a traditional contractor, so you weren't thinking that they would need a 1099, but they really would. Another thing that I want to say on 1099s is if you are hiring a contractor, you should get a W-9 from them before you pay them any money, to keep it simple, because otherwise you get to the end of the year, you're trying to do your 1099s, or we're trying to do them for you, and either the people think that you weren't going to 1099 them because for some reason they thought that you were paying them under the table, or they don't know what a 1099 is. It gets, or it's just, oh, now you have to collect 20 of them between January 10th and January, 25th. So it could be a lot of work. So I highly, highly recommend, if you are hiring any contractors, get a W-9 before you pay them. Just like if you were hiring an employee, you would get them to fill out, all the employee paperwork, the W-4, before you could even pay them. So kind of keep it in the same vein. Okay, now here's the next thing that I wanted to talk about on payroll. If you own a company and you are an LLC, taxes and S-Corp, or you're in straight S-Corp, whatever, then I know I've talked about this before, you as an owner has to be on payroll. Regardless, when paying a vendor, how would one go about finding out if the vendor is a corp or not, and if a W-9 1099 is needed? So the rule of thumb is always ask for a W-9, because you're never wrong to ask for a W-9. And then on the W-9, the vendor has to say what their tax structure is. So, like if they're Joe Blow LLC, you don't know if they're a corporation or not. So you say, please give me a W-9, and on the W-9, it'll say whether they're a corporation or not. If the name of their company is Joe Blow Inc., then they're a corporation and you don't have to send them a 1099. You won't need a W-9 from them. But honestly, like if you were to ask a corporate attorney, they would just tell you, a corporate accountant, they would just tell you get a W-9 from everyone so that your bases are covered. Because then if you ever assume someone was a corporation and they weren't or anything like that, you have all the W-9s, so you have proof. So it's just like having good documentation before you pay any company. Almost ask for a W-9. And we're talking about service companies, right? Not Starbucks, not Amazon, not companies that you're buying products from, but any company or individual that does a service for you that isn't an employee. So I think that answers the question. As much as possible, get a W-9. Okay, so now, if you are a corporation, whether you have employees or whether it's just you on your own, you have to be on payroll. It can be a pain in the ass to set it all up. You know, any bookkeeper can do it. A CPA often does it. You know, we can do it. Reach out to my company if you need help. SolvencyNow.com. Maya@SolvencyNow.com is my email. But if you are an S-Corp or you are an LLC taxed as an S-Corp, you as the owner have to be on payroll. Okay, so how much should you be paying yourself on payroll? So what the IRS says is that it has to be a reasonable salary. What's a reasonable salary? How much would you pay somebody else to do that same job? Whether it's somebody else in your company, or you could even research what other people in your field, in your area get paid. You also want to look at how much profit are you actually making, because you can't pay yourself. You can't be like, I made $30,000 this year. My whole company revenue is $30,000, but anybody who does this job makes $100,000. Like, that's great. You deserve $100,000, but you obviously can't pay yourself $100,000. So the other thing to look at is what is your profit, and your salary should be, rule of thumb, I'm not a lawyer, it should be about half, 40 to 60% of what your profit is. And we've talked about this before, but I'm going to go over it again. Why do you want to have payroll? How does it save you money? Good question. Thank you for asking. So first of all, you have to be on payroll as an S-Corp because that's an IRS rule. And if you're not, it's a law. If you're not on payroll, if the owner of the company is not on salary, the IRS probably could notice and audit you, and you will owe fines, and it's a legal point. What is a good annual revenue or profit number where someone should look into S-Corp and payroll? Yeah, I'm going to go over that in a second. That's a good question. Okay, so I want to explain why you save money, because obviously it costs money to set up payroll and all that. So you are paying, if you are self-employed, if you're an LLC, if you are not an S-corporation, you're paying self-employment taxes. Self-employment taxes ends up being around 15% of your profit. Now, as soon as you S-corp, which we talked about, you don't have to pay self-employment taxes on your profit, but you do have to pay a salary. So the reasonable amount of salary that you pay yourself, which will be about half of your profit, you're going to be paying payroll taxes on, which is also about 15%. But then the rest of your profit that you pay out to yourself is only taxed on income tax, and so you save that 15%. So it's very important as a business owner that you do that. You're actually saving money. Yes, it can be a pain in the ass to set it up. Yes, it's some administrative work to keep track of it, but it saves you money in the long run. Okay, so let me answer your question, Jerry. What is a good annual revenue or profit number where someone should look into S-Corp and payroll? Okay, so if you are making about $100,000 in revenue and let's say $50,000-$60,000 in profit, that's when you should be looking at doing an S-Corp. And if you're already an LLC, which I hope that you are for the legal protection, then at that point you would elect to be taxed as an S-Corp, and then you would set up payroll. And we can do all that for you. Any bookkeeper pretty much can do all that for you. We can do the S-Corp election, we can do all the payroll registration for the states and the federal, and get your QuickBooks, your QuickBooks or your payroll software set up and get that all going for you. But I would say a good rule of thumb is about $100,000 revenue, $50,000-$60,000 profit. That's when it's a really good idea to start getting that S-Corp and where you're going to start saving money. I have seen companies that are making millions of dollars and they have not elected to be taxed as an S-Corp, And I just want to say that they're literally throwing money at the IRS. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm all about not overpaying the IRS. Like, let's pay the IRS as little as we possibly can legally. So those are the main things. Actually, I guess I said that very fast. Do we have any more questions on payroll or 1099s? Who should be 1099? Who should be W-2? Payroll also helps you take advantage of maximizing deferred compensation plans to reduce income taxes. Yes, what Jerry said. I don't do taxes myself, so I don't even know how that works, but Jerry does. So yeah, you can take advantage of maximizing deferred compensation plans to reduce income taxes. There's also a lot of cool things that you can do that you do need payroll for as well. Like, if you have kids, you can open a family office. You can put your kids on payroll, and that saves you money as well because they are payrolled, and it's a business expense for that family office. So there's a lot of cool things you can do, but you have to get tax planning to kind of get it all planned out and know what to do. But the thing that I really wanted to talk about was payroll. Now, when you set up payroll, it can get easily complicated, right? There's a lot of different entities that you have to register with. You're going to start getting a ton of letters in the mail. I know I have employees in a few different states, and I get like a letter. Every quarter I get a stack of letters. But the thing is that letters from entities, from states, from the IRS, they're not that big of a deal. If you have your payroll going, you get your payroll set up correctly, you have all those things under control, and all they're telling you is, your unemployment insurance rate for that year. We mostly do payroll on QuickBooks Online. We can set people up on payroll for QuickBooks Online, whether they're even a payroll client or not, if someone just needs help as a consultation to get set up. I also have other, kind of smaller payroll companies that I use for just individuals who need help on that, called Patriot Payroll. So if you want to get set up on that as well, I can set you up on that. It's relatively inexpensive. I do know why people have a hard time with payroll, because you have to actually register. So if you're in Florida, you register in Florida, plus the state, and plus for unemployment insurance, and they're not easy to, it's just paperwork that's sometimes hard to understand and often hard to confront and look at. So that's why it's a good idea to hire a bookkeeper. Okay, why would a business owner hire a bookkeeper to help with payroll versus trying to do it alone? Obviously, anyone can do it themselves, but what goes into it and why, when it makes sense to hire a pro? Yeah, so I think I've been kind of speaking to that just now, but yeah, anyone can do it. You probably can even call Florida State and be on hold for 45 minutes and ask them to walk you through it. It's all doable, but we have a lot of experience on it. My payroll specialist that works in my company, she's set up payroll in almost every state at this point. She even has, for California, we've had to call them and do things with them so many times. We already have a California employment development rep. So she just calls them and talks to them because it can get complicated. You do get letters. It's unfortunately, especially these days when a lot of companies are hiring remotely, every time you hire an employee in another state, you have to register for payroll in that state. So it can take a while. You also want to make sure that your payroll is accurate, because if you aren't paying correctly, or you aren't making sure, like, you're withholding taxes but you're not paying them, that will cause you grief down the line. If you aren't withholding taxes, you owe the money anyways. So you have to make sure that you have it set up correctly. There's also, benefits, paid holidays, paid vacations. Like, you have to be able to track all that. And you can either try to keep track of it with a million spreadsheets, or you can use a payroll service. We can help you set it all up correctly so you always know exactly how much all of your employees have accrued, or you have, if you're paying yourself vacation. So I guess that would be the main thing, is that payroll is an area, like some other tax areas, that gets easily complicated, and it doesn't have to be complicated, but they make it complicated. The forms are complicated. They're many pages long just to look at. So if you, for any reason, feel like you don't want to read that book in order to sign up for payroll, then you hire a bookkeeper. Is there a way to know if someone set it up incorrectly? Let's say I do it myself and think I did it correctly, but maybe I missed something. Is there a system that tells me a mistake is made? If you, excuse me, if you set it up yourself, and you set it up with a payroll service and it's all set up, if you're using a payroll service and you put in the correct addresses of all your employees and all that, then it should be done correctly. A common mistake that I have seen is that people, business owners, withhold the payroll taxes that are supposed to be withheld, but then they don't take it out of their bank account right away, or don't put it into a separate holding account for payroll, and then they spend the money, and then when the payroll tax bill comes, they don't have it, and now you're going to get charged penalties, late fees, all that stuff. There are quarterly reports that have to get filed every quarter. There are annual reports that have to get filed, and if they're not filed on time, so either if you don't file the report on time or you don't make the payment on time, you get fines and penalties, and they can get quite large very easily. If you have a small company and your payroll is only a few $1,000s a month, but you don't pay your payroll taxes on time, or you don't file your payroll reports on time, the penalties and the fees and the interest will accrue, and it'll get bad fast. Also, there's other things to keep track of. Overtime, for instance. Overtime laws are different in each state. For instance, California has this rule, which is overtime is anything over 8 hours in a day and over 40 hours in a week. It has to both, right? So let's say the person worked 9 hours a day for 4 days. You're going to pay them an hour of overtime for each day, even if they didn't work 40 hours. And let's say if they worked 12 hours, one day, and the other days they worked less, but somehow it still ended up being, 12 hours is a bad sign, because eventually a bad example, because eventually you get into double overtime as well at around 12 hours, depending on the state. But if they worked over 40 hours in the week, you're paying them overtime for the over 40, plus paying them the overtime for the over 8 hours in a day. So it's a lot to keep track of. And if you don't, let's say you think someone, here's a whole nother area, there's salary versus hourly, right? So if you put someone on salary who really doesn't qualify to be on salary, and if they ever reported you and said, hey, I worked a bunch of overtime that I didn't get paid for because my boss said I'm on salary, but I don't feel that I should be, you will have to pay them for all the overtime that you owe them, plus the payroll taxes and all that. So yeah, there's actually a lot of ways to mess this up, and not an easy way to see if it's being done wrong, unless you don't know if your payroll reports have been filed, you don't know if your payroll taxes have been paid, or you're not withholding payroll taxes, or you're withholding and not paying the government. So there's a lot of ways to mess this up, and I don't ever want to say that you couldn't do it on your own, because you absolutely could, and there's a lot of smart people in the world and smart business owners. But one, as business owners, time is worth a lot of money in, potential income production, and if they're spending hours trying to figure out payroll, they're losing money. And again, I don't think you have to be an expert in every single thing. Like, you are an expert in what your business does. You're probably an expert in a lot of areas under you as a business owner. But payroll is really an area that can get very complicated very fast, and has a lot of, as Jerry said, fines and penalties attached to almost every single area of it, and a lot of liability if it isn't done right, and has really good documentation. So I recommend hiring someone to do it for you. And oftentimes CPAs don't even do payroll. So it's going to be your local friendly bookkeeper that you're going to probably reach out to. Some CPAs do payroll. Some bookkeepers don't want to get into payroll because it's so complicated. Some companies just do payroll. But however you go, it's highly, highly recommended to hire someone to help you on payroll, a bookkeeper, a CPA, a payroll specialist, so you get it done right, so you're saving money, so you don't have legal liability, so you're doing it right. Because unfortunately, the more that I talk about this, the more pitfalls there are in this area. So yeah, that's my appeal to you. You got to do it right. You got to protect yourself legally. You got to protect yourself in all aspects. So the best way to do that is to get an expert on your side. Do we have any other questions? I know I could get like way more detailed about each state and what their payroll and overtime rules are. I think I said this already, but Florida luckily doesn't have that overtime rule. Florida is just anything over 40 hours in a week is overtime. So that makes life easier for anybody in Florida. I don't know if I know every single state off the top of my head, but I know a lot of them. So if you have any questions, you can comment. If this is after the webinar is over, you can email me, maya@solvencynow.com. You can reach out to me on Facebook, Maya Weinreb. You can DM me. I'm on LinkedIn. The fact that I can talk about payroll for 30 minutes is why you should hire me for payroll. Yes, thank you, Jerry. I could probably, and the more questions I get, I could talk about it even longer. Like, what about blah? Yeah, let me give you a whole dissertation on that area of payroll. There's just so much to know, and I have studied and researched it so much. You know, when like the PPP loans came out, was that last year or the year before now, in 2020? There was so much to know and how that connected to payroll, and so many people that didn't qualify because they weren't set up on payroll correctly and weren't able to get that loan, that it was very sad. So, and I did tens of hours of research on just the PPP loan and the EIDL loans at the time so that I could really help all my clients. So I was doing webinars, I was helping people, but all of these things are based on having correct payroll, and people weren't qualified because they didn't have correct payroll. Not only that, if you're trying to get a house loan or any other kind of loan, business loan, your books have to be correct. You have to show that you made profit, and you have to be able to show your payroll. They're going to ask for your W-2s. If you don't have a W-2 as a business owner, unless you're self-employed, and you just started your business and you're making under 100,000, less than like 50,000 profit, then you should have a W-2 to provide. And if you don't, you are shooting yourself in the foot in so many ways that I could go on forever. But I won't. And I appreciate all of your time watching. And like I said, if you have any other questions that I haven't covered, which I'm sure there's lots because I could talk about this for hours, please feel free to email, DM me. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, smoke signals. Just reach out and we will help you. My whole purpose is to help business owners succeed. The mission statement of my company is perfect and complete financial records for your peace of mind, and that's really what I want to help people with. I want people to have peace of mind. I don't want them to have to deal with confusing, complex IRS, state laws, taxes. It's all blah, blah. We can help you. We can make it simple, and it can be simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. It just takes having the experience and the knowledge, knowing what to do, knowing how to handle it. So again, thank you all for your time. Thank you for watching. I hope I could help. And I'll see you next week at the Bottom Line Live. If you have any topics or questions that you specifically want to ask about, please send me a DM or write in the comments, because I'm trying to do a new subject every week. And there's lots to talk about. So whatever's the most important to you, please let me know and I'll try to answer that. Okay, thank you all so much. I'll see you next week on the Bottom Line Live. Bye!